Hello and welcome to CGE Q&A Wednesdays. I am Sakina Bunch, your holistic relationship health and wellness coach, and I am so glad that you are here today. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and this month I have an amazing guest. Now, last month was Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, and we talked to Nikki Hasty, who was a ovarian cancer survivor, and she talked about her journey. This month, we're going to be talking to Allison Efaw, who is also a survivor of breast cancer, stage 4 survivor of breast cancer. And she's going to be talking to us about her journey. Now, Allison has been married to her husband, Jamie, for over 22 years. They have 3 children, Jonah, Mia, and Noah, and all of them Allison homeschools. Let's give her a round of applause for that. Yes. She is a retired Army spouse, and as I've stated, she is a stage 4 breast cancer survivor and a registered nurse. She is a Christian who is grateful for God's love, and she desires to serve the Lord wherever he places her. And I believe he has placed her here for such a time as this, because this information is so needed and not found mainstream. So I want you to please welcome Allison Efaw. Hey, Allison, thank you for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us. Please, you have an amazing story. We've been friends for quite some time, and you have an amazing story. So please tell us about when you got diagnosed.
Okay, it was in 2015, actually on Christmas Eve. I was at a friend's church in Louisville, and I came home. I was all excited. We were having Christmas Day the next day with our family, and I was in the shower, and I felt some little lump underneath my left armpit. And thought, oh, okay, I've had a cyst before, years ago, and they removed it, and it was a benign cyst. So that was what I immediately thought. Several weeks went by because of the Christmas and New Year's holidays and people being away, and I finally got into the doctor's office, and they went ahead and did an ultrasound and a mammogram. And what I learned is that I had what they called dense breasts. And I asked them to give me a visual to help explain what that really was. And they said, well, it would be like looking at a big pile of snow and trying to find a golf ball. That's what dense breasts are like. Sometimes you'll have lumps or cystic formations, and they just can't see it. So even though my breasts were very small, I've always been a size A, or cup size, maybe a B when I was pregnant, they just couldn't really get good pictures on it. So they went ahead and did the ultrasound, and I could just tell something wasn't quite right when the ultrasound technician left the room to go get the doctor. Therefore, I knew something was up. Of course, I had to wait for the results. And when I went to see the physician a week or so later, he said, well, we aren't really sure what this is. Based on my history, I thought, well, this sounds like it could be a cyst, because years ago, and by that I mean like at the time, it would have been 12, 13 years prior, they had removed a cyst that also looked cancerous, but was benign. So I thought, okay, that's fine. He said, we could either do a biopsy or just remove it. And I said, well, why don't we remove it? Well, the surgeon went in, he removed it, and what happened was he did not get clean margins. But I had like a comet tail kind of coming out, like think of sun rays coming out that were so faint, so microscopic, it was not able to be picked up. So essentially he cut right through the cancer, and I was told that's essentially like poking a hole in a hornet's nest. Now the cancer was free to roam from the area of encapsulation. And so I had to go back in, and upon further testing and more visits, I was now being sent up to James Brown Cancer Center in Louisville. The physicians recommended a mastectomy. And from there, at the time, I was, I had 3 children at the time, like you said earlier, 6, 8, and 12. No family. We were in a military community. We had absolutely wonderful friends and neighbors who were very helpful, but I just followed what the doctor said. I was a conventionally trained nurse, and I thought, well, this is what you do. And so I went ahead and had the bilateral mastectomy, and they recommended nipple removal because by this point, by the time I went back in, the cancer had actually spread to my nipple all the way up deep into my armpit. So they removed 3 lymph nodes and the nipples. And I, at the time, thought, well, I don't want to look uneven on one side, so I opted to do the bilateral mastectomy because I had also found out 2 other friends had cancer that went from one breast to the other. And, you know, I'm to the age, I'm not having more children. So I thought, well, I don't need them. So to me, it meant, let's just get this cut out and removed. What I did not know at the time was that cancer is a systemic disease. And everybody in the world, everybody has cancer cells. But at some point, your immune system stops functioning properly, and there are a number of other mechanisms that occur. And then the body, when it does start developing cancer, it encapsulates it. And that's often where you get these tumors. And so what I realized was that just by cutting them out and removing the cancer doesn't necessarily mean that I'm free from cancer. All it takes is one rogue stem cell to migrate to another place. If you think about it, when I had that surgery, that was an 8-hour procedure. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the size of a pencil eraser, that's the equivalent of 1 billion cancer cells. One cell is all it takes to go roaming through the lymphatic system or other places. And with all those doctors in there maneuvering and cutting me open and getting everything out, mm-hmm. something's bound to be moved. Mm-hmm. And so that's what happened. I thought I was clear and fine until 6 months later, I felt another lump not far from the original site. And by the way, 4 mammograms really could never confirm that it was cancer. So some people that these mammograms are the be all end all. And in my case, I had mammograms for years and it never picked anything up. The original tumor was about a little over 1 centimeter. Mm-hmm. So 6-7 months later, I went in, I was at the doctor's office, and I went ahead and had the ultrasound again. And I was in there. The radiologist actually came in because they said, well, we want to make sure everything looked fine. They actually thought that what I was feeling the second time was what they called a bifurcated lymph node. It was like the lymph node had split in two and it was just thicker. They went ahead and did the biopsy. They said, let's just make sure you're still fine. And it came back as cancer. At that point, once it hit my lymphatic system, I knew this was a much more serious situation. I had a PET scan a year earlier and it was clear. Then I had another PET scan upon this diagnosis, and I found out it had metastasized throughout my ribs, my rib cage, my pelvis, and my thoracic, lumbar, and sacral spine. So I was now a stage 4, all within less than a year. And by the way, they did recommend chemo and radiation initially, but I had what was called a triple positive breast cancer. That means I was positive for estrogen, progesterone, and HER2. And that type of breast cancer is often treated with a lot of hormone blockers, but the HER2 just makes it more aggressive. So I had stage 4, triple positive, and additionally, I was what was called a 3+ grade. With breast cancer, you have 1, 1+, 2, 2+, 3, 3+. 3+ is the worst, meaning very aggressive, highly proliferative. So how did I feel? I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I had 3 children. It was hard. You know, I thought, how did this happen? And while they did initially recommend 18 months of chemo and radiation, when we actually looked at the statistics, if I did what they recommended, it was only going to be a 7% better outcome. 7. Not 77, not 97, 7. So wow. I thought, why would I put myself through 18 months of misery for a 7% chance of maybe a better outcome? Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe I should change the diet, add supplements and whatnot. And where we were at the time in Kentucky, we live in Colorado now, there was really no particular place I could go. The people in Kentucky are very sweet, very friendly, but I found out that they didn't even have a state naturopathic organization that at the time that was recognized. I mean, you could find some naturopathic doctors here and there, but nobody that I really knew particularly close to me. There was one in Elizabethtown, but it wasn't like I had a lot to choose from. Mm-hmm. And at the time, like I shared, I had younger children. We homeschooled, and that in itself was a challenge because even if my kids went to school during the day, my shift would begin the moment they got home. I'd be up till 9 or 10 at night helping with homework and assignments and projects. So in many ways, it was easier that they were younger because school was not a huge deal. So we could get by, and that's what we did. And at that point, once I got this diagnosis that I was considered terminal, and because of where it had spread, I had to really make some quick decisions. I guess the silver lining is that at the time, I had not had any metastasis to any vital organs. So we did some research. I began looking online, and I found places in Mexico that offered alternative care, and I read a lot of success stories. I didn't know anybody, so this was a huge leap of faith. And even though when I got the diagnosis, I started all the treatment that the conventional doctors recommended. I went on Herceptin, Perjeta, Taxotere, Gozerlin, Zometa, and Neupogen. And these are all drugs that either stimulate white blood cell activation. They would cause me to go into chemical menopause. Two of them were what they call immune targeted therapies. One was an outright, pretty neurotoxic chemotherapy. And one was also to help with the cancer sticking to the bone. All of these drugs carry an enormous list of side effects. I started taking them. I went from being able to walk and run 8 to 12 miles a day to feeling absolutely crippled. Like I couldn't even get my underwear on and off. My husband had to help me. And the pain was unbearable. I had very odd side effects. My mouth, I could develop sores all over my face. I looked like I had a bad case of teenage acne. And, I also lost control of my bowels. I needed Depends. I mean, these are very adverse, unusual side effects. We went to see the oncologist, and my husband flat out asked her, he's like, is this going to help her? Is this going to cure her? And this is why we made the decision not to continue. She said, no, she will live like this till the day she dies. And he said, so this isn't going to cure this cancer? And she said, no. She said, it's so aggressive and it's so far along that this is what you'll do. And I said to my husband when I got home, I said, there is no quality of life in this. So after hearing those words, that's when I really picked up my search and started reaching out to anybody and everybody who had breast cancer. Most people I met in Kentucky, they had just done what the doctor told them. And in my case, I knew there was not much that was going to be done in the conventional model. I know chemotherapy will never kill cancer stem cells, and neither will radiation. That is a fact. So I reached out, started looking at alternative clinics. Keep in mind, with the 3 kids and being a homeschool mom, we were a 1-income family. I didn't understand that these clinics, they offered some of the same things with the CT tests and PET scans and whatnot, but anything done out of country, you'd have to pay for that again. So that was a bit, it was very disconcerting because we didn't know where we were going to get that kind of money. We did have some savings, but my husband's thought was, well, what good is savings if you're not here to enjoy retirement with me? And I love my husband dearly. I'm so glad he looked at it that way, but that's when we began looking at alternative places. I had 3 narrowed down, and I ultimately decided on a place called Santa Vive. And the reason I picked Santa Vive was for a few reasons. Number one, the founder is Dr. Myron Wendt. He's the founder of USANA, USANA. They're an MLM supplement company, but Dr. Oz on the Dr. Oz show, those are the supplements he takes. I live here in Colorado. This is called Olympic City. We have literally by my house, I've got the Olympic athletes training. Those are the supplements they use. As a matter of fact, we had the Olympic gold medalist Keegan Randall here recently. She's a breast cancer survivor. And I said, do you know about USANA? She said, yes, I do. They use them. And then the Spartan athletes use them as well. They always come out highly ranked on any independent third-party testing. So this doctor not only had a good supplement company, but he also is an epidemiologist and microbiologist. He doesn't treat patients, he studies cells. He knows what cells do and how they behave and how to heal the cells. And it all starts at the cellular level. If you heal the cells, you will eventually heal from the gut outward rest of the body. And that made sense to me. So anyway, I talked to people who had been there, who had successes, not just for cancer, but diabetes and other ailments and whatnot. And I went there and I wound up staying for a month. And they did everything. They did IV curcumin, which if you read about curcumin today, it is a spice. They cannot patent it, but MD Anderson and Sloan Kettering and Johns Hopkins, they have studied this spice. It's the spice that you find in curry. It's what makes it that bright yellow orange color. And it has been known to kill cancer stem cells. It's also used in the case in Mexico, they put it through an IV and gave it to me. I was given hyperthermia treatments where they would heat my core temperature up to about 105 degrees. And that at that temperature, that kills off cancer cells. They did something where they took the blood out of my body, ran it through an ultraviolet light machine, and then before they put it back in my body, they would infuse ozone, which is an extra oxygen molecule. And that would help more oxygen, the less chance cancer grows. They had hyperbaric oxygen chamber treatments. Normally, the hyperbaric oxygen is used for treating decubitus ulcers, pressure sores, or wounds that people might have if they lay in a position for a prolonged period of time. Mm-hmm. And they use that there because the thought was it will just heal and heavily oxygenate the body. They do a lot of treatment on the teeth. They found that it was over, I can have my percent wrong, so don't quote me on this, but I know it was well over 90% of breast cancer patients have had either mercury amalgams, root canals, or dental cavitations. I had the mercury, so I had all that removed. And then I had also had, and it was done in a very proper way. I mean, everybody was dressed up like Ghostbusters because mercury is very toxic.
Toxic, yeah.
And yet in the Army, they still put them in people's mouths. Won't go there, but anyway, I had what was called dental cavitations. That means when they removed my wisdom teeth over 20-something years ago, when they closed it up, they did not get all the bacteria out. So what they found on my panoramic x-rays was these pockets, and they looked like they were filled with bacteria or pus. I actually took a picture of that panoramic, sent it to my doctor in Kentucky, my dentist, and she said, Allison, according to my training, it looks fine. But if they're telling you that they see something that I don't, I think you should go with what they're suggesting. And I'm glad I followed her advice because they were right. Upon biopsy results, I had anaerobic bacteria in both sides.
Oh my gosh.
What that meant was my body was constantly in a fight or flight response. It was putting out infections and trying to keep tabs on it for 20-something years. And it was such a those are deep pockets. You can never get them opened up and cleaned out unless somebody surgically goes in, pumps that area full of ozone or heavy oxygen and cleans them out. And then they sewed them back up and they gave me ozone therapy and heavily oxygenated and ozonated rather, olive oil. I didn't have one pain medicine. Normally a person can't speak for a month after that. I was speaking within 3 days.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And so they put me in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber several more times. And it was like I healed very rapidly.
Mm-hmm. So many people may not understand the difference between a regular cancer cell and then the stem cell. Can you explain the difference?
So the cancer stem cells have not yet differentiated into what they're going to be, but it's like they're kind of getting in line. That's the way I picture it. It's like they're getting in line, ready to become what their purpose is meant to be. So that's why I said earlier, chemotherapy and radiation, any oncologist will tell you it does not kill the cancer stem cells. And so, but these other treatments, like I found out broccoli sprouts, pomegranate seeds, curcumin, they all kill those cancer stem cells. It's like these 3 food items, these spices or ingredients, it's like they know what that cell is going to turn into and they eradicate them. And there are studies on this. Your doctor's office isn't going to have these studies, but just because the doctor doesn't read a current study in a nutritional magazine doesn't mean that it's invalid.
Amen. Say that again.
If you read something, if you find something in a credible source that says, hey, this can work, and your doctor dismisses it, well, don't think that what you've read is invalid. he isn't up on, and there's no way every doctor can read about nutrition, and we can go into that. I've had 3 doctors call me because they've had family members dying. They all shared with me. 2 of them are surgeons and 1 is a practicing internal medicine doctor. And they all shared with me that they got very little to no nutritional training, but they got pharmaceutical training weekly. And so that's what we're being treated with, is all these drugs, and every drug has a side effect. Yeah. So I would rather use natural products that are here on this earth in their holistic state, natural molecular structure that have not been tampered with. And God put all the plants and foods that we need here on this earth to treat our bodies. That's what I would rather do. When I went to Mexico, that's what they trained us to do. We were actually given lessons, how to juice, how to do coffee enemas, how to prepare meals that would be healthy for our bodies, to heal our bodies, how to make soups that would be cleansing and healing. I didn't get any. I've been at 5 different cancer facilities, 5 different oncology offices. I never got any of that. But down there, I felt like I went through a month-long crash course.
I'm sure. Now let me ask you this. Now, was your husband allowed to come with you there?
He was, but because of the situation with the kids, he stayed home. And I did have a dear friend. She was kind of like another. Well, we call her our Pacific Northwest mom. Right. She came and stayed with me for a week, just because when we first got married, we lived in the Seattle area, and she and some other ladies kind of took us in as we were their kids, but we were more contemporaries.
Right. That's awesome. So you talked about nutrition. Last week on our Q&A, we talked about juicing, and I shared some foods that are great to juice. Those dark green leafy vegetables, the ginger, the turmeric root, those are some things that are really good to juice. What are some foods that you incorporated in your eating style that you think were very beneficial?
So for me, well, that's the other thing I want to share. In Mexico, what they found was that, there's so many great diets. You have ketogenic and paleo and vegan, and then they have the ANA, which is for people who have a lot of autoimmune illness. There's so many different diets. You hear blood type diets, and I was confused. So I asked the nutritionist to do what was called metabolic typing testing on me. And what that means is she gave me a drink, probably similar to what a woman who's pregnant drinks when she does the glucose thing. Right. And what she did was she checked, I had to fast. She gave me, and they had baseline vital signs, saliva, urine. They checked my blood pressure when I was laying down and when I stood up. And they did several of those blood tests. She gave me a very sugary drink, which was about the equivalent of 10 teaspoons of sugar.
Oh, Lord.
Well, think about a lot of soft drinks these days. That's about the same thing. They have about 8 or 9 different 8 or 9 teaspoons of sugar. And so what happened is after that, she was able to check my blood sugar, my vital signs, everything after 30 minutes. What they found out was that I was what they called a rapid oxidizer. So if I ate something sugary, within 30 minutes, my blood sugar went from 90 at fasting. 30 minutes later, I was over 160.
Wow.
And then about another 30 minutes later, it came to about 120. They call that like a Mount Everest peak. Now, I know other people were getting tested the same way. Their blood sugar might have gone from, 90, 95, or 80 to about 105 and then right back down. The blood sugar spikes did not occur like they did in my case. And so cancer is going to use glucose first and foremost as a source of fuel. So because of that testing and the changes that were noted in my urine, in my saliva, and my blood pressure, they were able to determine that the best diet for me was primarily dark green leafy vegetables, lots of green vegetables, green apples, celery, kale, collards, cabbage, everything. If I ate carrots, it was better to eat carrots in their whole form as opposed to juicing them. And then they also added organic meat or fish. So I had that maybe not every meal, but a little bit of chicken or a little bit of fish. Organic chicken, the organic turkey were added to my diet. And then I would eat those as well. They kept me off dairy, off gluten, and off all sugar, except for that one sugar drink that I had for my testing. But that was huge because there is a lot of validity to these other diets. They work for lots of different people. So it made sense. Why not see how your body metabolizes and processes the food you eat? So that's what we did. And that's why, for me, the best thing was to have a little bit of meat in my diet. Little bit, but primarily plant-based and as close to raw as possible. Because the more raw, you have more enzymes that help with the food metabolism and the breakdown and so on.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I'm telling you, I could talk to you forever. You get so much great information that I know is going to help many people. Unfortunately, our time is running out, but I would love for you to share any information that you would like to share as far as how people can contact you if they have questions outside of this Q&A and they want some information. How can they get a hold of you?
I guess they can just email me, and it's just my name backward, efawallison@yahoo.com. If you have that on your show notes, they should be able to put that there.
I'll post that in the comments.
That's probably the best way. I don't have, like right now, I have my nursing license. Because I'm so busy with the kids, I don't have my own business or consulting. And part of me didn't feel like it was right I don't want to charge somebody to try to help them as they're battling a cancer. I do believe that God's allowed me to live, and I figured out a way right now, so even though I went through all this with you on the, in the interview, as of right now, after using lots of supplements, lots of juices, and I do what's called blends. This is not just a juice. I take water as well, and I use all the pulp and the fiber. So I do juicing and blending. So this is a combo of like 4 different green vegetables, and I add a little bit of water, and so it's nice and thick, but I have the fiber, and you want that as well. So it's not.
Do you put that in a blender? So like once you get over, because you know what? I was always wondering what I should do with all that stuff.
There's several things. My juice, sometimes I'll take all that pulp, all that fiber, and I'll put it in a big container, like a big pot on the stove, and I'll add, some filtered water. And then what I'll do is strain it after a few hours when it cools off, and I have a nice vegetable soup broth. And I'll add some other things like onions and garlic and celery and so on. And I'll just, cook it that way, and then just really squeeze it and strain it. So I have a 100% pure vegetable broth. And then I also do that. I keep it and I just blend it and I use it because, your body needs fiber.
Yeah.
If you don't move your bowels several times a day, that's as Chris Workus said in some of his videos, it putrefies.
It does.
I want it in and out,
Like you're a walking petri dish.
So I use all of it. None of it goes to waste. And then when I'm done with the remaining pulp, where I've gotten most of the nutrition out of it, we have 4 compost bins. So I put it out in my yard. So there's nothing that goes to waste. Even when I get ready, like if I have celery or something that's getting ready to go bad, I just throw it in bags in my freezer. And when they're nice and frozen, I'll take them out, and I'll take an avocado, and I can put it right in my Vitamix with some water and the avocado, and I just blend it up, and I can just gulp it down. So things like that are helpful. But the other thing I was gonna say is there's a lot of great books out there that I have read. I think I sent you a list of some of the books that have helped me. But when you're going through this, it's helpful, I think, when you can find people who have faced this obstacle. And I shared this with you the other day. As a Christian, I believed that it was God's will to heal me. Everybody has their own opinions about that, but when I looked at the scriptures, I read every account of Jesus, and he never turned a single person away. And when I finally got a hold of that and really embraced it and wrapped my mind around that, I believed it was God's will to heal me. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't get negative thoughts and doubt along the way. But one of the things I did is I made a huge stack of index cards full of verses. And once I embraced the fact that I was determined to get well with God's knowledge and wisdom, it was like every door opened up. I got to learn more about other things. I used, like I said, medicinal marijuana. I used supplements. I learned what kind of foods to prepare. And that's what helped me learn how to fight. I give all the praise and glory to God because I started out on that conveyor belt, and I just did what the doctors told me. And then when they failed me And I don't say they, I'm not mad. They only knew what they knew to do, what they were trained to do. My situation went above and beyond, and I had to ask the great physician, you know, what do I do, God? And every time that was my earnest plea, like, please give me your wisdom. And I would pray about things over and over. And it just seemed like the more and more I prayed, he just kept showing me things that I thought, like even medical marijuana, like, how can that be? I was trained it was the devil's lettuce. You know? but he put it on earth for a reason. Right. So I had to really expand my mind and open my eyes and renew my thinking. And, you know, lots of great books were put in my path. This was a great book on soups. You know, in the middle of winter, eating tons of salads just doesn't quite do it for me. But, you know, healthy foods. Lots of great books. I made a lot of Indian food because Indian uses tons of curcumin. Curcumin, yeah. So this has curcumin, and I can make it. Some of these things had like 16 spices. Spices are for health.
And so you know, you're a woman after my own heart because I see the Instant Pot. You know, I love my Instant Pot.
I know there's so many great things I can make in that. But I mean, everything from, you know, blocking electromagnetic frequencies with my cell phone, my iPad, putting radiation blockers, how to fight cancer with nutrition. A lot of these books are out there, but our doctors are not reading these, Sakina. They're not reading this literature. Using even the right kinds of salts. I use pure Celtic sea salt and Himalayan salt, not the Morton's white salt.
Yes. Even if it's coarse, we don't want that either. We want the Himalayan, want the Celtic, yes.
Right, right. Even reading, like I said, reading about medical marijuana and how it's used in a medicinal way to help heal the body. And then this was a book written by a guy. He had listed all these alternative treatments because I wanted to know what other treatments are out there. And so that's what helped me. I would just say that people need to pray about finding other options, that the conventional way does help people, but it does not help all of us. And for some of us who need to look at alternatives, you need to find an oncologist who is open and willing to help you. If they're not willing, you need to find somebody else. Because I have an oncologist and he knows what I do. And he says, it's not the way I do things. He said, but I know another doctor who can help you. And she and I work together. Great. But it took me 3 different doctors since moving here to find a doctor who said, I'll work with you. So,
and that goes for any doctor, not just oncology, because I know with my daughter, you know, her whole issue with all of the allergies that she had, and we had a doctor who was insistent that she was going to get all of these vaccines, but every time she got vaccines, she would have, like, it would be a hospital stay. And so it's like, you know, you need to have your healthcare physicians who are listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Allison, I thank you so, so much. One thing I did want to share with you is when you were talking about how, you know, you went to the physicians and the physicians, their treatment may work for some, but not for all, and how you spent the money, you did everything that they said, and it still didn't work. That reminded me of the woman with the issue of blood in the Bible and how she spent all her money, and then finally, because the physicians had failed her at that time, and she goes and she just touches the hem of Jesus's garment. And so that's what that reminded me of. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You are an amazing friend. I'm so glad that I know you.
I'm so glad we got to know each other. Yes. The Lord that put us together at that time in that place.
Yes, so. For such a time, yes. Well, oh my goodness, can you imagine? I mean, just if you tuned into this late, you need to go back to the beginning and hear everything that Allison has said, because it is amazing. She gave us the conventional, she gave us the non-conventional, and everything in between. So we have options. Well, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for tuning in and viewing. You can like us on Facebook. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can do whatever they do on Instagram. I guess that's follow. I don't know. But thank you for being here. Go to cleangoodeats.com for more information and for past episodes, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.